Hi everyone, my name is Sean Schwartz. I am the Director of Marketing and Sales Strategy for North American Steel. Welcome to today's webinar, which is Operational Responsibilities for Racking System Planning, Implementation, and Maintenance, brought to you by North American Steel. This webinar is an exclusive benefit for Inside Logistics readers and organized by Newcom Media's Content Services team. During the main presentation, you could write questions for North American Steel by typing them into the questions pane located in the control panel at the upper right side of your screen. At the end of the presentation, North American Steel will be addressing some of your questions. Let me introduce you to our panel today. We have WALEED USMAN, who is one of our senior project managers here at North American Steel in Whitby, Ontario. We have Mr. DERIK GOULD, who is one of our senior dealer sales representatives, also here at North American Steel in Whitby, Ontario. And we have Jonathan HIRST, who is our Vice President and General Manager of North American Storage in Calgary, Alberta. Let's proceed with the presentation. So in today's presentation, we're going to be covering a number of topics. So first, we are going to cover who is North American Steel, a little bit about our history, what we do, our services, who are some of the clients that we work with and have worked with in the past. We will then move on to discuss how to go about selecting a racking partner, things to look for, any design and permitting considerations. From there, we're going to move on to the responsibilities of the warehouse operator in regards to racking. We will touch on OHS requirements, racking PM inspection programs, repairs, and required signage. And finally, we are going to discuss the value of domestic racking suppliers pertaining to the supply considerations, any certifications, maintenance, and repairs, and of course, the origin of steel and structural concerns. So who is North American Steel? For those of you unfamiliar with North American Steel, we are a leading Canadian manufacturer and end-to-end service provider of pallet racking and industrial shelving systems. Our head office is located in Whitby, Ontario. However, we have offices and manufacturing facilities and warehousing facilities across Canada, throughout Ontario, as well as in the West Coast. Originally, we were incorporated in 1952 as a subsidiary of the Steel Equipment Company of England, which was originally established in 1898. But the company was acquired by the current owners, the Fabricas family, in 1972, which makes 2022 the 50th anniversary for North American Steel under current ownership, which is something we are currently celebrating and will be celebrating throughout the year. So from a manufacturing and warehouse perspective, we have over 400,000 square feet of manufacturing and warehouse capacity across Canada, as I mentioned, in 6 full-scale plants. We've got locations in Colborne, Ontario, as I mentioned, Whitby, Ontario, Edmonton, Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, as well as Mississauga, Ontario, and Vancouver, British Columbia. And something we always like to touch on is the fact that we are a proudly Canadian-owned and operated with manufacturing within Canada. So to give you an overview of our products and services, they really are quite extensive. From a services standpoint, in the previous slide, I said end-to-end, and I really do mean end-to-end. We work with our clients from the very beginning stages of their planning for the racking system or even the planning of their warehouse, all the way to the very end where it's been installed and serviced. So we have in-house engineering and design services. We have in-house project managers. We facilitate our own installations. We handle material handling, all the various product solutions. We handle safety inspections. And of course, we manufacture and we service everything that we sell. We cover a number of industries in terms of who we service, some including logistics 3PL companies, distribution centers, cold storage, outdoor storage, retail and retail logistics, warehousing, automotive, food and beverage, the list goes on and on. And when you have some time, you can visit our website at naseco.ca and you'll see a more comprehensive list of all of the industries that we do service. In terms of racking systems, storage systems. Again, we cover the gamut. We manufacture and install everything from selective and double deep racking, narrow aisle and VNA, very narrow aisle racking, cantilever, pushback systems, drive-in, drive-through, pallet flow, carton flow. We do a lot of pick towers, pick modules, shelf-supported mezzanines, catwalks, rack-supported buildings, and we have a very wide array of product lines as well, from roll form steel to structural steel to what we call knockdown or bolted racking, with various face profiles from North American or ready rack style racking to American teardrop style racking that some of you may be accustomed to. So a very wide array of racking and shelving systems manufactured and supported by North American Steel, essentially meaning we can cover almost any need, requirement, budget that we may be presented with by our clients, which I believe is a reason why, I'm gonna move forward, a reason why, sorry, let me go back. So many industry leaders have trusted North American Steel over the years with some of their most sensitive projects in their warehouses, in their distribution centers, in their manufacturing plants. Right now, you're looking at a slide of a very small handful of clients that we've worked with over the years, and you'll see some very prominent names in each of their respective industries, from Pepsi to Hershey's to BMW and Toyota. These are companies that we've worked with on really large projects across Canada, in the United States, across North America, actually. And why they trust us is we have such a wide array of offerings, and we work with them from the beginning to the very end, and our quality control is second to none. Now we're going to move on to the section of this presentation discussing how you can select a racking partner. So I'm going to pass this along to WALEED USMAN to present this to all of you today.
Hey everybody, this is WALEED USMAN. As Sean gave a very quick intro, I'm the project manager with North American Steel, located in the Whitby head office in Ontario. We'll be discussing briefly about what it takes, or what are the key parameters to think in the mind while a customer or a client or a consultant would be considering to select or finalize a racking partner or to proceed with that. In the next slide, I'll show you a couple of points that actually we have written down for you guys. The number one is that, especially for it applies to the greenfield construction, whenever a small or a medium or a large scale warehouse is being built or even is being initiated in the planning stages, go with a firm that actually provides a turnkey solution. It starts from the initiation to the implementation towards the project closing documentation. You want to go with that because of a couple of reasons. Number one is that the firm understands how many stakeholders are there. They want to make sure like each and every person, each and every company agrees, and they understand that the type of the customized design that you're offering for the customer will not interfere with any other trades or any other problems. So in one room, you have a racking supplier that is also working with the consultants directly, that is working with electricians, sprinklers, slab engineers, all these subcontractors as well, from the beginning till the very end when the permits gets closed. You also want to select a partner that actually has a really vast presence in not only in the location where you are building the project, but also like in the locations where you'll be planning to expand that. Let's say if you plan one project out in Calgary, you want to expand another asset in Ontario, the standards pretty much in nowadays are set. The guidelines are set by a customer. They want one particular type of the system for this type of the products that they want to implement throughout North American region or worldwide, wherever their presence are. So one particular partner will allow you guys to service them, will allow the customer as well to get the same type of product and in a better lead time, and have also a positive relationship in the end of the day as well. The third thing is that also the partner has a complete in-house design and engineering capabilities. They're not subcontracting that part out, because again, you want to make sure that the engineering and design that is being done for the customized solution or the customized product lines that are being applied in the type of the product that the customer is using is tailor-made. And everything is obviously comes at expense, but that expense is minimal for the customer that who has to pay in times nowadays where the steel prices suddenly goes out of hand. You want to make sure that the type of the design is efficient and effective. The most critical thing is the manufacturing capacity, the capability of a manufacturer, how much can they supply, how big of a warehouse can they even sustain or not. Fortunate for us as well, as Sean mentioned in the last slides, we are fortunate to actually own internally more than 400,000 square feet of manufacturing and distribution facility throughout Canada. So what that allows us to do is service our customers, to allow us to install them, to do all the projects from coast to coast. And that also helps us get the projects out in the States as well. Also, the lead times actually gets dictated by that. As projects obviously get increased, the lead times goes higher, but since having these big manufacturing and distribution centers, we actually can bring them down and also can stock them of basic components, which actually can be available in our quick ship inventory program. One of the most critical things that many of the companies don't really rely upon and don't really think is sustainability. This is one of the really key components that actually really comes into play. At North American, we are fortunate to be one of the ISNET members as well that not only provide a contractor safety and also rely upon having the material availability in a sustainable way. All the manufacturing processes that we have in our house try to use the minimum amount of carbon footprint. We have developed high-tech processes, robotic welding, to try to make sure that it is as much as of lean manufacturing, less amount of wastage as well. Ultimately, obviously more gain for the company and happy customer in the end of the day. The other sustainability measures that we actually have in place as well is what I would like to call is components from components. So if there's a one component that let's say a beam bracket, although it sounds like a minor thing, but the beam safety pins actually gets extracted from the same bracket. So you have one component, but you're trying to extract the another one from the same one, try to reuse the material. One of the facilities out in Mississauga is solely working on recycling and reusing the material. So they get the used material, they cut it depending on the type of the needs, whatever the new customer wants, and they extract that items and they reuse them. So trying to have all these strict measures to help us out in successfully in the next days to come actually is one of the really key components that you got to watch for and see like if that particular firm is really applying these measures in the company or not. Next slide, Sean. So design and permitting, what are the key considerations that a company or a consultant should keep in mind while reaching so now you have reached a manufacturer, what next? Like you want to initiate the design, you want to start you want to start thinking about the processes, that what it takes, what are the key checklist items. The number one thing is, other than the plan and the CAD files that you'll send, is that you want to give the criticalness of the warehouse, the importance of it. I'm not talking about the customer, but it's more like importance of, is that the facility going to help the rescue team, going to help the hospitals? Is that a medical supply company? How critical it is to have that made. Along with that comes the seismic consideration as well. You want to make sure that the building is being built seismically considered in a location which is a high seismic region. These key details comes directly from the consultants and the customers themselves, for which they actually bring up the geotechnical report, which allows us to use and extract a lot of key information to help us for the design. The next thing is that we choose the product line. Depends on the products. Some products are obviously small, medium, large, bulky items, or even the floor storage. We tailor make the products, depend on the type. We tailor make the product line, depends on the products. And in the same facility warehouse, we might even have 4 or 5 different type of system that we'll be applying with. Again, depends on the SKU counts, what is the type of the inventory coming in and out. Everything counts over here. So again, there's a whole system, and we get in place of that, and we try to design and move along accordingly. Now, after selecting these product lines, you want to try to have them designed as a cost-effective manner. So here the engineering and design comes into place. You want to engineer and design it so well that obviously the cost component will not come and be a big player in the end of the day. One of the most critical thing is the coordination with the key stakeholders. After we complete the design and process, we send the same files, we send the same details over to the other people, for example, electrical, sprinkler, slab engineer, and they make sure that their particular part of the items are not being interfered, or for example, slab in our case can actually hold the amount of the post loads that we actually have designed for. So we fortunately have the turnkey system implemented in our firm. We applied from the start till the end, and we try to make sure like all the stakeholders are informed rightly on time so that we can all have a perfect warehouse solution in the end of the day. Finally, it comes down to the permits and the checklist. Once everything is finalized, we go ahead and apply for the city's permit documentation. The city usually sometimes requests us to only complete one final inspection, but they can also come and they can say, depending on municipality, to have an initial inspection along with a midway inspection as well, if the customer wants a partial one done. The inspections, the permit checklist, the closing documentation, these are the final steps as well that come into play, although the permits application comes in the very beginning of the part. Once the project gets completed, we prepare an as-built version of the drawings, which has all the modifications, all the changes, pluses and minuses that we have done throughout the implementation part of the project. We update that, we provide the copies to the customer, to the consultants, to the cities as well, and off we go with that. So these all steps are one of the really critical points that one has to consider in the design, engineering, and also like after we have selected a partner, that how well they can be well versed with. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, WALEED. Just a reminder to everybody that any questions that do come to mind throughout this presentation, please submit them in the questions panel. It will remain anonymous, and we will touch base on those questions at the end of this presentation. Now let's move on to DERIK Gould, who will be discussing the responsibilities of a warehouse operator. Off to you, DERIK.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I am going to take on discussing with you the responsibilities of a warehouse operator. This can be from a designated person that takes on all of the safety implementation in your facility to employees working within the racking. The OHS requirements, or occupational health and safety, they are required for the employer to ensure a safe working environment for their employees. The employer is in charge of making sure all the racking equipment that is provided is maintained and in good working condition. And this information is to be relayed to all staff and posted around the warehouse in designated areas to ensure the safe operating practices on a day-to-day basis, whether this be in folders in a common area that all the employees can look through, or can be posted on the racking itself, which I'll be discussing later in signage. But this is all on the employer to make sure all employees are trained on all the safety factors that the manufacturer us have designed all the racking to. So some of these are based on the manufacturer's loading requirements, what have been designed for your racking to hold, to make sure that all the operators are putting the correct material and skids in the proper designated positions, and also procedures to report racking damage. So this, again, doesn't necessarily just fall on one person. One of the main terms that is always used in the Occupational Health and Safety Act is any competent person, whether it be your designated person or the employees. While they're putting all this product away, it is up to them to let everybody know, or to let the management know, or whoever's in charge, if anything is damaged, and if anything doesn't look right, and to make sure everything is just kept on top of, because you don't want any kind of downtime. Some more training would be safe operation of the mobile equipment and how to use it around the racking, be it the forklifts, pallet trucks, walkies, anything that's being used in the warehouse, just the proper procedures around them to, again, ensure that day-to-day activities can go on without any interruptions. Regular daily inspections, observations of the rack. Again, this is just put on the competent person that is utilizing the rack to ensure that everything is in working order. Any additional information relevant to the racking system also is to be relayed. We can move on to the next one there, Sean. So racking inspection programs. The inspection programs, they should be designed to fit with the company's schedule, whether it be at the end of the day, end of the week, even between shifts. It should be done on a regular basis. There are many different programs that you could personalize to the users of the racking to see often. Daily inspections are recommended to avoid interruptions in the daily workflow. Downtime on racking is burning money and production time. So going through again from the operator to an actual management position, some stuff you'll be looking for are, you can refer back to the loading signs posted on the racking to make sure that the skids that are put away do match the signage. You'll look if uprights are damaged and if splice is in good condition. If you have had any repair work done, you just want to make sure there's no dents, no twists in any of your frames. Is the racking plumb once it's been installed? Are racking braces damaged? Are the floor anchors installed? Or in case of sometimes when there has been damage on a frame, the anchors can shear. But again, if they shear, you've most likely already damaged that frame to point of replacement. Are clips regularly, or are beams damaged as well? If there's any dents, twists, or are clips regularly being dislodged? So your safety pins in your brackets, if they're popping out, if they just won't stay in place. Just all these little items are things to kind of keep aware of when you're doing a inspection on the racking. And then we can move to the signage portion, which what I brought up there. So the signage on the racking and verbiage should always be provided by the manufacturer, as they know their product best. So we've designed the system, again, based on the needs of the customer, what they're loading, where they're loading it, and all of that. The load warning notices for pallet racking systems, they should be fixed in a visible area around the racking so operators can reference these signages while operating their day-to-day work. Loading notes, structure design considerations, and reference text must follow is indicated by the manufacturer or distributor of the storage system. So on most of these signages, what you're going to see is to make sure that the signage is in accordance to the safety signs, signals, and regulations. Brief descriptive comment of the signage. So you're going to have, the user of it, who the manufacturer was, the location, what material was used, maximum load per beam level, and it's we do have a quick picture there that you could kind of see where this load sign has been attached to the end of this frame. And this is, in some cases, different aisles, you can only run one way or the other. So you may have the signages on one end of the rack if you can fit two of your, if it's a common aisle for forklifts that can go up and down, maybe you just keep them on one side. But if you're kind of going in one side and out the other, you may want to have your signages on both ends just to make sure that all operators can reference them when needed. There'll also be the height of the base plate to the top of the beams, space for information. So just any other additional comments that the manufacturer might have, they will have on here. So then everybody can reference it as they're utilizing. And can move on to the rack repairs. And one of the main points for rack repairs is we have at the very top, and I know WALEED and Jonathan, It's a big point for them too, is the best repair is the one you don't need. So what we always want to do when designing a rack system at the beginning, like WALEED had mentioned, is you're not only designing just the racking structure themselves, but you want to implement damage prevention and rack protection, because you want to minimize any downtime or any damages that may have an effect on your day-to-day procedures. The rack protection features, there's post protectors and the vial guards. We can double post frames. There's also at the very bottom of this slide here, you can see different options: a cant leg, severe cant, recessed leg. All these different options will be based on what you're trying to achieve in your facility and if it does make sense. If you're using reach trucks, the severe cant leg is an option where it is recessed in the sense of your straddle legs of your truck when you're reaching to your second position won't come into contact with that front leg for your drivers. It gives you that extra area to reach in and avoid continuous contact with that front leg. If repairs are required, it is recommended to contact the racking manufacturer, as they will have various options to facilitate a repair. Since we are the ones, or the manufacturer were the ones that first signed off and engineered and stamped the frames, the design, they are the ones that know the product best. They know what it can take, and they know what material we can get back together to help facilitate you getting back up and running. One of the issues that we have run into before are third-party companies that can come in and give you a base kit that the manufacturer hasn't designed. We've seen them complete these repairs on other manufacturers' frames, and they'll provide capacities on the repair kits, but not to the existing frame above that is utilizing these repair kits. And that can become an issue with yourself and the provider of those kits. They will sometimes not want to take on that responsibility of the frame, but they'll give you the warranty on that kit. So all in all, it is best to go back to the manufacturer that you have used in this situation, so they can help you get the correct solution, so there's no more downtime in these situations. That's good on my part. Thanks, Sean.
Great, thanks so much, Derek, and also thank you for those of you who have started submitting your questions. I see them on my end, and we will address them shortly at the end of this presentation. So let's move along to Mr. Jonathan Hurst, who will be discussing the value of domestic racking suppliers. Off to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sean. Considerations of domestic racking supplier. To a casual observer, all pallet racking looks very similar, unless you're aware of the fundamental differences between different manufacturers. Anyone forced to navigate the fine print of a simple cell phone package can likely relate to the devil being in the details. In our world, as it continues to evolve into one single marketplace, the dimensional similarity of pallets in global supply drives similar solutions for the purposes of moving and storing them. While similar in appearance, there is no universal standard for metal composition, calculations for capacity, qualifications for welding or assembling or installing pallet racking. While there's a number of design standards in place globally, these are all regional in scope, and they're very specific to the country of use, the equipment available in that market, the environmental conditions that determine the strength requirements of the rack in that region. Minimum standards of source steel yield strength, anchoring, safety factors are still very much the responsibility of the manufacturer to investigate and ensure compliance when they're providing racking for your application. While it's implied that every manufacturer meets the same minimum criteria, we as consumers still implement decision-making tools to help us decide how to narrow down choices when we're presented with more than one. As consumers, we develop personal tools for assessing products for signs that indicate proof or reassurance that the items we purchase are of a high quality, are sourced ethically, and manufactured with integrity. The more transparent the process of the supply, the higher level of reassurance we have as consumers that our assessment of an item is accurate. A common example I use to illustrate this is the buying confidence that results from food supply. We all have to buy food, whether it's delivered in a box to our door, delivered on a plate to our table, or picked from our garden or from the grocery store. If you're fortunate enough to find yourself living near a farming region, be it fresh fruit, vegetables, maybe an area with vineyards, or maybe you're close to an ocean where you can go down to the dock and pick up fresh fish from the catch of the day, how is your mindset impacted when you know the path the food took to land in your basket? Possibly that person selling you that item is the one that planted it, harvested it, maybe they caught it. They will be intimately aware of every step of that process, and you can ask them questions about it. As a result, your level of confidence in that information is higher because you have the transparency of the process and the source which is providing these items to you. When the racking you're considering is made domestically, you have similar access to get answers to your questions that you may be considering. Where does the steel come from? What proof do you have to ensure that the strength of the product in my building matches the values that you're using in your calculations? What are the qualifications of the people manufacturing this rack? Is the manufacturing process environmentally responsible or sustainable? What is the workplace safety record of the plant where my racking is being made? These are all very valid questions that any purchaser or buyer of rack should have in the back of their mind. Racking should not be treated as a blind source commodity that's just purchased once. You are starting a relationship with a supplier that will collaborate with you, with your health and safety group. They'll collaborate with your business development plans for years to come. Like any partnership, you should do your due diligence before you make a decision and understand the transparency of the manufacturing pipeline. Maintenance and repairs. Maintenance of racking is primarily focused on keeping the racking in new or like new condition. This means being free of dents, damage, rust, tears, or any signs of incidental impact. The original shape of the racking is what we use to determine how much it will carry in pallet weight. So when that shape is altered, even in a small way, now the known strength and its relation to the safety factor or buffer that we build into this becomes unclear. So utilizing domestic suppliers for your racking ensures that the components that are originally installed and designed to work collaboratively to create a safe environment for your facility associates are readily available. Mixing manufacturers can be physically possible and was far more commonplace in previous decades, but it breaks a chain of liability that we are now be held accountable to as employers and operators. And the original manufacturer will hold that liability when you maintain the system in the manner in which it was supplied and commissioned. When racking is procured from unknown sources or through third parties, you'll at best be subjected to what happens to be landed at the time of your purchase. That may work with your system on day one, but at worst, you may have to be shut down for extended periods of time because many of the global racking manufacturers amortize shipments into container loads. So you could be waiting months for spare parts. And typically, the spare parts that they provide are not one-offs. A Canadian manufacturer is agile, they are attentive, and if they are looking at, say, it's a series or repeat occurrences of certain types of damage, we can make special and customized parts to ensure that we can protect those areas of high incidence in your warehouse. It will be the operator's responsibility to demonstrate to provincial occupational health and safety officers that you're maintaining a safe workplace for your associates. You can achieve this really in three straightforward steps, to which my associate DERIK alluded. You have to ensure the weight of the pallets are known to the operators. You have to ensure the allowable pallet weight is on the racking, is clearly identified to the operator. And you have to ensure the racking is new or like new condition. That's it. It's a really low bar. It's not, however, as easily to maintain over the long period without a good plan. Number three, ensuring the rack is in new or like new condition, falls to maintain and operating a rack maintenance and repair program, of which there are many, which we've previously referred to. The value of utilizing domestic racking resources is that we can work with your facility to identify why incidental damage may be occurring. We can quickly implement specialty solutions into those areas and ultimately keep you compliant, both with provincial occupational health and safety and compliant with your own standards of a safe workplace. Structural concerns, I love that picture. Oh, 1 second, that's my favorite picture. This picture here is actually of a system that was standing. It was struck incidentally by a very heavy forklift. And unlike the YouTube videos that you see online, if that racking is correctly manufactured, installed, and designed, there's a significant amount of factor of safety in place that will prevent those catastrophic failures that we see so readily on YouTube. Canada is still in a developmental stage of creating a standalone rack design code. We don't have one. In fact, we only just entered into the building code in the last 5 years. It's a process that takes many years and even longer for this process to be adopted nationally and down to the provincial level. The majority of Canadian racking manufacturers participate voluntarily in testing, analysis, and promotion of design standards that reflect the safe workplace standards Canada is internationally recognized for. This may often exceed standards of other countries in both minimal material strength, seismic force conditions, and factors of safety. Understanding and adhering to the accepted rack design code in Canada is not as simple as buying one code, but it's comprised of a series of codes that best advocate for the manner in which racking is utilized across Canada. This requires an investment both in time and training to understand how all of these parts and codes work together. Currently, there are no participants in the CSA pallet racking design working group from outside of Canada or the United States. Now, if it was simple as purchasing and following a set of instructions, then that would make this a lot easier for all of us. However, anyone who's tried baking while working from home in the last 2 years can relate that it takes repetition and practice and experience to obtain the desired result. It is, from my personal experience, some things are just more than the words on the paper. That's why bacon supplies are purchased in bulk, at least in my house. Professional pallet racking engineers across Canada are in limited supply. It is a very specialized subset of engineering. It combines structural, civil, and mechanical specialties. It requires knowledge of the geotechnical information across Canada, wherever that project may be. How we build rack in BC is significantly different from how we build it in Regina, into Montreal, and onto the East Coast. It requires data on the shape properties of racking, which is not available and not within the public domain. And the values that we need to determine capacity are only obtained through physical testing. So this is why it's very difficult to find professional engineers who will commit to an allowable capacity of racking manufactured offshore, because these critical components and data obtained through testing are not available, or they're not required. The Canadian market, while largely geographically diverse, does not necessarily warrant the additional costs that meeting Canadian code would require to manufacturers that are not dedicated to this market. That seems like a lot to consider for an owner operator, and it is, but you are not alone. Companies like North American Steel, with 50 years in the Canadian market, have teams of resources ready to assist you in all aspects of pallet racking design, pricing, layouts, engineering, permitting, and of course, installation. Many hands make light work, and we're here to help turn your business growth challenges into a success story. On behalf of my fellow presenters, I just want to thank you for your time today. Encourage you to ask any questions you may have regarding the topic that discussed, maybe a slide that we've shown, or an application you would like some further information on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you everyone for attending today. I'm going to keep this slide on during our Q&A session, just so you can all, if you need to mark down any of our contact information, our website to visit after the presentation, feel free to do so. And prior to starting our Q&A session, I'd like to update you on the following. This webinar will be available on insidelogistics.ca, as well as NASECO, NASECO.ca, which is the North American Steel and North American Storage website, as well as the North American Steel LinkedIn and YouTube pages within the next 2 weeks. So you'll be able to replay this webinar at any time. You can share it with any colleagues who may have missed out on this, and you will receive an update once that is available. And you can also feel free to follow North American Steel on LinkedIn for those updates as well. And now let's get started with some of your questions. We'll address as many of these as we can. First, we have a question. Do all racking installations require a building permit through the city, specifically in Ontario? And I think WALEED, perhaps you'd like to field this one, as this kind of pertains to your section earlier on. WALEED, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Sean, can you please repeat the question again?
So the question was, do all racking installations require a building permit through the city in Ontario?
Perfect. Thank you so much for the question. It's actually one of the really critical ones, because many of the times there are some city municipalities who have different bylaws and bycodes as well, not only the permitting section. They want you to design, they want you to take some factors into consideration that the building code sometimes might not really ask for it, because the building code usually refers to more like a national code. They want to keep things more like in line for everybody, but you want to categorize everything locally basis as well, because that is something that overlaps over every other jurisdiction. Yes, you need a permit for a lot of municipalities, but there are a lot of city guidelines as well, which basically ask you like to do some apply some applications in a specific way, or sometimes you can even get a waiver out of it by submitting some sort of letters or closing off the documentation and just submitting that as a checklist items. What I can recommend is that if there is any specific city that the attendee who's asking, like who actually has some questions, and they can actually ask us, and we can try to reaching out to the city official and we can ask them that directly. The building code guidelines along with the permitting items are evolving process. The city that might not ask for the permit today might actually start asking the permit on tomorrow. So they keep on changing their regulation, they keep on changing the checklist requirement that's required for the permits as well. So we have to ask them on every project basis just before we apply for the project, if there's any checklist that has been changed, if there's any requirement that has been updated, because we want to make sure that we are up to date as well and we're on top of all of them.
Perfect. Thank you so much, WALEED. Here's not so much a question, kind of a comment, Jonathan. Someone said that you forgot to mention that the CSA standard covers a lot of issues related to safety of racking structures in A344-17. I don't know if that's something you kind of want to touch on right now, or maybe we can invite a follow-up discussion.
Yeah, 344 is a code for safe operation of rack. It doesn't actually cover the design of rack and the required calculations. Currently, those calculations are found under S16. And the 344 section is going to or was slated to be adopted by B335, which is a forklift safety code. The presence of racking and code in Canada is something that myself and predecessors in the effort have been working on for almost 2 decades, and it's still in flux. We are still trying to find some firm ground where we can plant a flag that is that will be a code that will handle both the safe operation and use of racking, and more importantly, create a cohesive and well-developed calculation side, which actually will guide manufacturers and engineers on how to properly analyze racking. It's that side of the code is still very much in flux. So there's a lot of us rely on test results on portions of the code that relate to buildings that are applicable, and as we partner with various testing facilities and other racking code generating sources, we try and align ourselves to be compliant with our geographical neighbors and with the safe operating standards of the Canadian market.
Perfect, thank you, Jonathan. Another comment from somebody in relation to your presentation, Jonathan. Yes, baking is a skill. I thought you'd like that. We do have time for a couple more questions before we're at 1:55. We have a few more minutes. We can cover 1 or 2 more questions. Let's see. So we currently floor stack our product. How do I know if my facility will benefit from racking?
I'll touch on that. Sure. The rule of thumb is if you can stack more than 2 high, or if you can stack up to higher than 33 to 50% of your clear height, then the return on racking, as far as just basic selective, is going to be ever reducing returns. If you have a product that does not stack very high, or you have a very high working height, maybe you've got a clear height of 32 feet, 40 feet, and your pallets are less than 8 feet tall, then you are going to see certainly a much higher storage concentration by implementing racking. And at that point, we would be working with you, depending on your product type and number of SKUs, to determine which system works best, so we can increase that storage density. So, but if you can floor stack your stuff 2 or 3 high, make sure you do your homework to ensure that the cost of maybe adding an additional 1 or 2 levels is justified for your business model in your current location.
Thanks, Jonathan. One more question here. Does cant leg racking typically have the same capacity as selective pallet racking? And they're just curious why cant leg racking is not used more frequently.
I can touch on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. So the capacities actually are different for the cant legs as compared to the selective leg. Just a quick concept: when you are devising a cant leg, the front leg actually is right besides the back leg. So we don't really consider that as a double post, as a 2-post, like individually transferring the load towards a slab. We actually we consider that as a mono post design when we are like conducting an analysis for a normal frame that has a straight leg. In a way that's when the loads get split up into 2 parts. A couple of factors: not many customers actually have a big pocket to pay for a big enough slab whenever they're going with a cantilever slab design. So or cantilever leg frames. Usually whenever you're considering a cant legs, we are talking mostly about the freezers facilities. We're talking about double deep systems, which are in a much more actually bigger scale as opposed to like any medium or a small scale warehouses where we normally tend to go with either recessed leg or sometimes even actually as much as a simple selective frame with a straight leg. So it depends on like how big of a warehouse it is, how big of a customer it is, how exactly the scope of work they're planning with. And there are certain design measures that obviously can be done, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a very severe cant that actually just touches the back post. We can actually recess it on by just a couple of inches just to allow a little bit extra clearance for the customer as well. And in that case, we can definitely tend to rely more upon a straight leg frame concept as well, and that can definitely benefit too. So that's a good question.
Thanks, Wade. Jonathan, did you want to add anything to that, or good to go?
I just wanted to add on that with any cant leg, it does change the loads that the slab has to resist. So if that is something that you feel is possibly a good solution for your facility, or maybe a facility that you're planning, you'll want to make sure that you get the slab capacity verified for the increased loads, because it will be a little bit harder on the slab. Having said that, in our experience, if you're in the position to construct a thicker slab to allow for the cant leg application, that money will be recouped in uptime and reduced maintenance costs and improved pallet throughput, with a very short period of time. So it certainly is worth looking at, and if the slab is approved to carry that type of rack design, it's one that we strongly recommend.
Thanks, guys, for that information. I think that definitely answers that question. So looks like we're at the end of the presentation. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you do have any further questions for the North American Steel team, wherever you might be in Canada or North America, please reach out to us by phone, by email. You can reach out to us on our website at www.naseco.ca. You can find us on social media at North American Steel. So yes, thank you so much for attending, and I do invite you all to fill out our brief exit survey form, as we do value your comments and feedback. And thank you again, and have a great day.